Minister of Home Affairs and New Growth Industries. Um, we're here to ask you about new growth, so
Okay.
not home affairs. Um, what new growth industries are emerging as priority investment sectors, and how is infrastructure being aligned to support them, if any?
Good morning, CEO, and thank you very much. Please allow me the opportunity to acknowledge our Prime Minister. Good morning, Prime Minister, ministers, cabinet ministers, members of parliament, senators, esteemed guests here today, invited guests, investors alike. Welcome to Belize and welcome to yet another successful event hosted by the Office of the Prime Minister and BELTRAIDE. And New Growth Industries, Madam CEO, is very grateful for this space that you have afforded us this morning because we little but we talawa, as the Jamaicans would say. In the year 2020, the Prime Minister came to me when he was making appointments and he said, you know, we are in a time of COVID and we need to diversify our economy away from the traditional. Yes, we need to maintain our traditional markets, but at the same time create new opportunities for investors, for Belizeans, so that we can diversify moving forward. And that was where New Growth Industries was born. And so I'm very grateful to be the Minister of New Growth Industries and to share with you this morning a lot of the developments that have taken place. As you know, we have diversified successfully a lot of the markets when you look at turmeric, soursop, coconut especially, cattle, cacao. These are all industries that are taking Belize to the next level, not just regionally, but internationally. I think I want to join our Minister of Foreign Affairs this morning when he was quoting our Father of the Nation, because he always envisioned Belize being the breadbasket of the Caribbean and Central America. We can be that bridge for both regions, and I think that point has been emphatically made by our Prime Minister and the Minister, and of course, all of the panelists. And I think that is why all of you are here today, for us to see the vision of our government in realizing the dream of the Father of the Nation, taking Belize to that next level. In terms of the emerging markets, I can sit here today and say, every time we come to this summit, Prime Minister, for some reason, cannabis comes up. As you might have heard a few years ago, our government started off New Growth Industries with cannabis legislation that received widespread support from both the government side and the opposition, but it got to a point of gridlock, so to speak, because a referendum was triggered. Well, one village council has said, we're not going to wait until the national referendum. We want to have that referendum now. And so that's a new and exciting opportunity for Keycocker, for the residents of Keycocker, because they themselves realize that there is a lot of usage, illegal sale of cannabis taking place in the country, because yes, it is decriminalized, but at the same time, there's no way to regulate it, to enforce it, to set up dispensaries, to have a taxable and regulated industry that keeps cannabis out of the hands of young people. And so I think they are creating a secondary income for their island. Tourism, of course, will always be number one. But when we face crisis like we did in COVID, there's always a room for a secondary income like cannabis. And so we look forward to that. But speaking of cannabis, there's also a hemp industry. I'm happy to say, CEO, that one company, Tropical Health, is already selling CBD products in Belize, successfully so, and hopefully we can create new markets for them, not just in the region, in CARICOM, and hopefully to North America as well. Other big products coming up, Cahoon. I know we have Mr. Rudy Castillo here today with us, one of the pioneers of the Cahoon industry. We are setting up right now as we speak the regulatory framework along with the Ministry of Agriculture and Energy, because what you might not know about Cahoon is that it has so many uses, whether it is edible oils, whether it's for cosmetics, whether it's to add as a preservatives to our beautiful lobster products that we produce here if we can get Cahoon oil with the lobster in a can, it's going to be a remarkable game changer for Belize. And so I want to acknowledge Mr. Rudy Castillo, the working group, everybody who's been working hard to advance that industry, and especially for energy as well, the biochar and the energy aspect for Cahoon. Seaweed, that's another superfood. Prime Minister, I think we need to brand Belize as the superfood destination of Central America. Because whether it's soursop, whether it's Cahoon, whether it's seaweed, whether it's cacao, all of these things are what North America and the rest of the world are looking for. Superfoods. And so I think that is a brand that we need to try to look forward to. Seaweed by itself has 92 essential nutrients, believe it or not. So many healing qualities, health qualities that seaweed has. I know that there is a female group working along with fisheries, 38 female seaweed farmers in Placencia. Another huge success story for the people of Belize. And where we want to go with seaweed, we don't want to be like Vietnam, because Vietnam is sending raw seaweed to North America for maybe like $1 a pound. We need to add value to our products. We need to package it. We need to process it. We need to, yes, improve on our standards and make sure we hit all the standards internationally so that we can sell our seaweed nicely packaged, not for $1 a pound, but for 18 US dollars a pound, for which it deserves, because it's a huge, high value product sought after in the rest of the world. So we need to look at seaweed. Diversifying, we also look at the film industry. We're working, Madam CEO, along with the Ministry of Culture on creating a real film industry for Belize. A few years ago, Hallmark did a movie here in the south of the country, in Placencia. I don't think they said they were in Placencia, though, unfortunately. They said some other destination. But that production alone spent some $2 million in a very short period of time. We need to create the incentives for the film industry to see Belize, because you could look around you here today, whether it's the Barrier Reef or the Blue Hole or the Mayan temples or a rainforest, we are an ideal destination for film. And so we need to create that market, that incentive for the companies to come in and establish. And so I hope I'm not leaving out any of our other projects, but there are many others, like I said, turmeric that we're supporting and looking forward to growing the economy by diversification.
Thank you, Minister, and again, thank you very much. And at BELTRAIDE, we know what you're doing. We concur with the whole project for turmeric, the project for seaweed that has so much value, the project for film. As we know, the orange economy is, we call it, it's exploding, and that's good for us. It's with the help of the Ministry of Culture. And what we need to understand is, for everything to work, for our new growth industries, even our traditional industries, we need to, the line ministries need to work together. And I see that coming together very good. And that speaks well for us, and it speaks well for the country. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Now we have Minister Habet. Minister Habet is in a very funny position sometimes in sustainable development. And I say that only to say that when you want to put investment along with sustainable development, it's a very, very difficult balancing action that you have to have. We want, yes, we want the investment, and we want all the investment, but we need investment that is sustainable, that passes the environmental evaluations that the ministers, a ministry will have to do their due diligence. They will have to ensure that it is a nature positive project that we are implementing. So, Minister, my question to you today is, how are climate resilience measures and environmental safeguards being incorporated into infrastructure and investment planning.
Thank you very much, CEO, Prime Minister, colleague ministers, CEOs, excellencies, certainly the invited guests, the investors. No, you said it right. It is a difficult situation for us at the ministry, but we have to strike that balancing act between development and conservation. But if you allow me just 1 minute just to mention something that I wanted to mention regarding the Kuhun, because we just had our climate week last week, and on the last day we had a climate finance forum, and the person who was representing the GCF told us, listen, you cannot continue to look at just projects with one single objective and goal. Your projects have to, your issues have to be programmatic. And I think the issue of Kuhun is programmatic because, as the minister mentioned, you also have to look at the fact that with Kuhun, you don't tear down, you don't take down the tree. You also provide food for the wildlife because you don't take out all. You provide jobs. You also look at what you mentioned just now, vanilla and other under canopy products that can be produced while the tree is still standing. So just to add on, Minister, I support that certainly. Belize, in Belize, climate proofing is not considered a cost line, but rather it is how we protect cash flows, shorten recovery times, and keep assets bankable through shocks. But for us, what we did was we produced and took out our third iteration of our NDC, NDC 3.0. NDC 3.0 is something that was developed through the collaboration of all the sectors, all the ministries. And so we look at energy, you look at water, you look at transport, you look at conservation, you look at everything holistically, and it is based on looking at the MTDS, the Medium-Term Development Strategy, and Plan Belize. So it is something where everything can converge. The updated NDC is more than an emissions target also. Even though you reduce emissions and you have potential for carbon credits, it serves as a national roadmap where every major investment, infrastructure investment has to take ground. You look at screening against climate hazards, against flooding, sea level rise and droughts. And this ensures, really ensures, what is built today will still function tomorrow under harsher climatic conditions. We have reports from the International Meteorology Organization, which tells us and shows us where maps, where Belize will be affected in the next 50 years, in the next 100 years. And it shows you where you get affected from Corozal, and it might be differently in Stan Creek and Punta Gorda. So we have to look at how we plan out all of these functions. The ministry is also in process of developing its multi-sectoral NAPS, or National Adaptation Plan, which focuses on land use, on settlement and infrastructure, tourism, human health, agriculture, and forestry. This allows for climate resilience and environmental safeguards to be built into the infrastructure. So, for example, now we have, under the Ministry of MIDH, you have the building codes. So are these building codes that we have now also pertinent to what we will have to do going forward, right? And then we'll be talking about greening. So are the building codes now also pertinent to putting up solar panels, green infrastructure with your buildings, cooling systems? So all that has to be taken into account. But you also have sector-specific resilience targets. For example, outlining actions across transport, across the energy sector, and coastal infrastructure. Belize, as we all know, plans to install the 100 megawatt of solar energy. So that is one area that we have to support. And by adopting this target of electric vehicles also to 25% of electric vehicles by 2035. I know Belize City has started to do some. The Ministry of Energy is starting to bring in some electric vehicles. And so where do we go from there? How do we build the infrastructure to put the electric, the charging hubs along the highways or in the municipalities so that we have that resilient infrastructure to meet what we are trying to build. So that's very important. But also mobilizing finance. The finance for that infrastructure is also absolutely important. So we have to have access to sufficient financial, but also to technical and innovation, and also to have our human capacity built in within it. Because part of the infrastructure is also to have, if you have the electric vehicles, do we have the mechanics or electricians that will be able to service these vehicles and other infrastructure? So that is very, very, very important. We have to have faster and predictable approvals. Minister Koyi, yesterday in the first panel, spoke yesterday about the ease of doing business. He spoke about new fiscal incentives, adjustment to tax laws, but that is from the finance side. From our ministry, from the environment side, you look at environmental impact assessments and how these are moving to a risk-tiered, time-bound process with early scoping, cumulative impact checks, and digital tracking to reduce surprises while keeping environmental safeguards strong. I recall when we came into office in 2020, you had the shrimp industry really down to the lowest it could have gone because of the early mortality syndrome. And what we met was that our officers were requiring EIAs for solar panels. I said, this is ridiculous. And electricity is about 60% of the cost of production for the shrimp industry. So we removed that right away, and immediately they were up and running. So these are some of the things that we have to do. And certainly what we're doing with the environmental impact assessment also is that with the EIA regulations is that we are modernizing the regulations. As you mentioned, CEO and Minister Fonseca mentioned, the ease of doing business. So if a project does not require an EIA, then not to put the environmental conservation part aside, but to make certain that these projects can also fit in. If they don't require an EIA, then maybe a low-level impact assessment, a low-level environmental study, maybe that would be sufficient. For government projects, where do they fit? For those projects that are certainly coming on through the protected areas managers, we require that they try to become independent. So the only way they can become independent is to look at projects that possibly can bring in funding for them to become independent. Most of these projects might be in the area of tourism. But if we will require an EIA that is costly, they might never be able to do it. So we have to see how we can reduce the requirements for some of those, but still certainly keeping the fact that we have to make it environmentally sound, right? So that is very important. We look at environmental and social safeguards. We align also with International Finance Corporation, the IFC, the performance standards, World Bank environmental and social safeguards, the ESS, and IDB safeguards. That alignment reduces diligence friction for lenders and equity partners. So while we have those standards, it allows us to be able to get financing from outside, and it's easier for us to look at that. What some people might not know is that we have, through the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, now developing the loss and damage framework. Belize is looking at the loss and damage framework from the point of inaction, because I can come up with an estimate of what the cost is when a hurricane strikes. But what is the cost if you don't do anything? Because it exacerbates. So that is the standpoint that we are looking at. But also, that would be some funding to alleviate maybe the private sector who got their infrastructure damaged. But also, we are looking at, Belize also has qualified for IDA, the International Development Assistance.
Yeah.
And so Belize now qualifies, and so whenever an event like those happen, then it can trigger some funding. You can look at parametric insurance, which can also kick in for those who qualify. So these are some of the areas that we are looking at. And certainly for looking at leveraging regional and international support, Belize positions itself to access new financing streams from climate negotiations. This expands fiscal space for government and reduces sovereign risk for investors, which is absolutely very important. But also to mention here in closing that our job is to make sure that we have an enabling environment for investors. We become the facilitators. And I like what Minister Kareem mentioned yesterday in his opening statement, that the private sector is the economic driver for economic prosperity in Belize. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your comprehensive response to the question. And working in investment myself, I know that it is very important for investors to know what sustainable development, what the road ahead lies, and what is sustainable development doing to transform the opportunity for business for investors. And as we go promoting investments, that these are the questions that come up. What is your government doing to ensure that the ease of doing business is better today than yesterday? So thank you very much for that response. We come back now to transport. And I know Dr. Zabaneh is ready to answer any question, but we will pose this question to him. How is Belize integrating sustainable transport planning into long-term national development goals? I know you have, through your presentation, done some of this, but perhaps you can give us some more information or whatever you have in mind, or the ministry is planning to do from a long-term perspective.
Certainly, CEO. Thank you very much. Into videos, so I have another one. Sure. No, wait. Listen. So, CEO, one of the things, of course, that we heard summit here, and Habet had said we had an excellent week talking about ways to become resilient. The transport sector is one of those that provides that opportunity for long-term impact. We talk about adaptation measures, which is primarily what we have been focusing on, but definitely there are other ways, mitigation efforts that are also taking place. For example, with the e-buses in Belize City, as we might be aware of, we've had a pilot project that has already been launched in Belize City, where we have 2 e-buses that have been serving the public and has gotten quite a bit of positive reviews from commuters who have been using it. You will see that already the e-buses in a very short period of time have moved over 180,000 passengers in the last year or so. Also, what the bus system there has provided is a sense of good scheduling, where now actually the commuters now are ensuring that the bus only stops at the bus stops. We know, as I spoke about in the previous section, that because of excessive competition on the highways, buses tend to stop all over in the villages. They literally want to stop in front of your door to get you. But of course, that provides a significant inconvenience to other passengers. What the e-bus system has done is to provide structure, to provide a sense of timing, and certainly the numbers are showing the economic benefits. In terms of the cost, it's a fraction of the cost compared to diesel power. So that is now being launched now across the country with an additional 3 e-buses that we have. Again, we are grateful to the people of the EU for that support, and of course our friends at UNDP. We've worked together, and we now have one of the operators that won the bid for providing this service across the country. We spoke a little earlier about putting in the infrastructure, having the charging systems across the country. And so it provides an opportunity then for the country to become certainly more resilient. You provide a better service to the commuters, and altogether meet beyond adaptation. We're now also mitigating climate change. So I believe now as a country, we've already been recognized to be a major carbon sink. We now are going beyond that, having contributed the fact that we are reserving so much of our forests and so much of our seas. We are going beyond that now, and we're also looking at other ways in the transport sector now. In the bus sector, we're already showing the benefits of it, and now people will become more familiar with these benefits, and then it's a matter of changing mindset, as we had said in the opening from our friend from Sandals, who made it clear it's about mindset. And so that mindset is changed when we have new experiences, and already now the Belizean people are beginning to have these experiences with e-buses. And so we're certainly looking forward to the next phases as we utilize other systems, like we have a cashless system that also assists with the bottom line, because now the businesses do not have to rely on their funds going through the hands of others. It goes directly through the ECAS system. So all of these all together are being implemented and contributing to that long-term goal of sustainability.
Thank you, Minister Zabaneh, and for that response, responding to how transportation can become climate resilient, and also how you can contribute from your standpoint to the economic growth and the economic resiliency of the country of Belize, and at the same time giving our commuters a better and more efficient experience in getting to work. I know both in the private sector and the public sector, that has become a problem, getting commuters to work on time. And that is not their fault, but it is the fault of the transportation industry. So we need to fix it. Thank you very much. Now we have the second question for Minister Musa, but before I pose the question, Minister, I want to say something about turmeric and about seaweed. And I want to say that because we have Ambassador Lily here, and she has been very, very much helping us with the MSMEs, and especially for women. And those two industries, those two sectors, turmeric and seaweed, are basically focused on women, and basically women that are single mothers. So I think that is a very, very good project, and I thank you very much for helping out. Thank you. Your second question, Minister, is how is your ministry addressing regulatory and policy reforms to attract investors and foster innovation in these new growth industries?
Thank you, CEO. If I may just join you in thanking Ambassador Lily as well for all of the hard work and cooperation and partnership that we have received from Taiwan in various sectors of our economy and development as a nation. And I also want to acknowledge another female group, NIME. I'm sure many of you may be familiar with NIME, a group of young women who have come together, and they have so many brilliant ideas to diversify our economy. And that is really the mantra for our ministry. It is innovate, diversify, and sustain. And I think that's a common thread that you hear among the panelists throughout the course of the last 2 days, is that we want sustainable growth. in every single aspect of our development, that is the direction we want to go. Belize is recognized all across the world for our eco-friendly resorts or boutique hotels. I think that is a brand that we have developed, and that's a brand that we're growing. But in every other aspect in our industries, we don't want big manufacturing. We want light manufacturing. We want light processing. And that is where we have positioned ourselves at the ministry, is to create the framework, exactly what you're saying, CEO, to develop the policies for Cahoon, which we are working on with various other ministries, to create the legislation for cannabis, which took us almost 2 years. But that's the kind of effort and work that goes into creating the roots that will eventually grow and eventually develop a sustainable industry. In the film industry, likewise, we are making amendments to legislation to allow for greater incentives for businesses from all across the world to bring in their equipment when they're coming to do a film. For seaweed as well, there is a working group that is creating a mariculture law that will regulate the standards, again, sustainable standards. Where in the country can you grow seaweed? Where are these designed areas that we're going to have seaweed farming? And so that really and truly is the essence of our ministry, to partner with you, the investors, and say what it is that you want to do. Let us realize your vision. Let us put it on paper, but let us be sustainable in how we do it and moving forward. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that. And now we have our last question for Minister Habet. Where do you see the greatest investment opportunities in sustainable infrastructure, including green buildings, flood control systems, and coastal protection initiatives?
Thank you once again, CEO. Just before I delve into that, I think from the first question, I wanted to mention something. We have to work together with all the communities, all stakeholders that are involved in any development project, including the NGOs, because what we have to see is Belize first. And we listened to the CEO, owner of Sandals yesterday. If we don't do that, we will never have a Sandals in Belize. So we have to start thinking that way. But certainly this question for greatest investment opportunities is not one that you can answer. It's not, doesn't have a single answer. We have to look at different variables within the context of the question, because you have to see the topography of the land, where it is located, the population size, the exposure to different vulnerabilities. And the case in point was Belize City. Belize City was vulnerable to hurricanes, it's below sea level and everything else. So that caused our predecessors to come up with different studies that indicated that Belize could no longer continue to be our capital city, and we had to move to Belmopan. So now you move from there because of topography, because of vulnerabilities, now you move to Belmopan. But so you have to look at issues of increasing susceptibility to flooding, rising impacts of extreme marine and terrestrial heat events also, because that is also important. We are doing some cement streets, for example. Are those the best compared to pavement? Do those produce more heat? Because your population is also important. They're the ones that will be working in those environments. And so also a fragile economy that is vulnerable to climate shocks has to also be considered in the development of these pieces of infrastructure. So I think based on those factors, investments can be encouraged in the following areas. And I think everybody here would have different ideas. These are my ideas of where we can do some of those investments. But green buildings and energy efficiency. Belize has a growing demand for residential, commercial, and tourism-related infrastructure. Those are some areas that we can look at to focus. Investment opportunities exist in green certified buildings, integrating solar power, natural cooling systems, and water efficiency technologies. My office is called the Green Building. It is a new building. And I entered that building and I told my staff, the only thing green about it is the paint. But it has a metal roof. There, it is not, it is really not there. So we have to look at it. The distribution of solar mini grids and EV charging hubs to replace diesel in rural areas. And also these can be looked at as a backing for carbon credit revenues because you can look at it from that standpoint. Rooftop solar and efficiency retrofits for green buildings, which is very important. Lowering energy demand and supporting urban resilience. This aligns with Belize's National Energy Policy Framework and commitment to reduce emissions under NDC 3.0, opening the doors for public-private partnerships and incentives for developers. So when you look at that area, I think you can attract investment into that area. But for ourselves, domestically, those are some of the things that we have to look at. Look at areas where you can have flood control and urban resilience, in modern drainage systems, flood-resilient roads, and nature-based flood solutions. We have to look at those areas when we look at investment into green solutions. These projects protect communities while reducing future infrastructure repair costs. I have some communities which every time there is a flooding event, there's a lot of rain, they come and they tell me, as area representative, there's a lot of water that wasn't here before. Well, these are villages that are now 40, 50 years old. When they put in the culverts or infrastructure, it was sufficient for the water that's there. Now, we as politicians have accessed additional lands for extensions, and now we have torn down the forest, and now there's more water because there's no retention. Now you need to dig up all those culverts and put them in because that's a problem. Coastal protection and blue economy is another area. Seawall reinforcements where necessary. Ecosystem-based coastal defenses such as mangrove restoration, seagrass protection, and coral reef rehabilitation. Difficult to get some investments, but it is something that is necessary because we also protect our tourism because a lot of our resorts and hotels are on the coastline. So we have to put some investments in that area. Certainly initiatives that support tourism, fisheries, and community livelihoods while qualifying for blue bonds, insurance-backed financing, and embedded finance structures. So I think looking at it from that standpoint, you can kill, I don't want to say kill more birds because I'm an environmentalist. And you have the cross-cutting opportunities for public-private collaboration. Investors can tap into projects that not only yield returns, but also reduce Belize's climate vulnerability. And that is absolutely important. I've said before that we have the barrier reef, which is the second largest barrier reef. I sometimes say the largest living barrier reef, but in a meeting that I attended for biodiversity in Guyana about 2 months ago, the ambassador for Australia came up to me mad and said, "How dare you say that the barrier reef in Australia is dying?" I said, "I didn't say that. I said Belize is the largest living barrier reef." So these are some of the things we have to look at. Certainly looking at the circular economy and waste management, very important areas where we can have some investments. Again, looking at the fact that you have programmatic projects that are not only singular goal and singular objectives. Looking, if you do waste to energy, one, you are reducing that ugly site. Two, you're reducing your methane emissions and complying with your commitments internationally. You might produce some biochar for fertilizers, and you can produce energy to sell to the national grid. So there are at least 4 components that you look at there.
Okay.
So in closing, the greatest opportunities lie at the intersection of resilience and growth. By investing in green buildings, resilient flood systems, and coastal protection, partners can help us safeguard Belize's future while also participating in a market that is ready for sustainable long-term investment.
Thank you, Minister. And in closing, I want to really thank the 3 ministers here today for highlighting Belize's government approach to public infrastructure as a driver of investment attraction, sharing national strategies and reforms that enhance infrastructure delivery and investor confidence. Also presenting current and upcoming opportunities in utilities, logistics, natural resources, and climate resilient infrastructure. And lastly, I believe that you showcase how coordinated, as I said before, ministerial action is in positioning Belize as a competitive, resilient hub for investment in this region. Thank you very much.